Oh, welcome back to the coffee show, everyone. I am your host, Kirk Pearson, joined today by Lucy Ward. Welcome to the coffee show.
Thank you so much.
We were just talking a little bit before I hit record about a wild prediction that I made. So this is the first podcast with a guest I've done since then. And you know, I mean, it's not so much about that, but how's about we now live in a world where people pay $30,000 a kilo US for coffee.
Right.
And you're good friends with Rachel Peterson.
Yes.
So, yeah, how do you feel about it?
I'm stoked for it. I mean, the fact that this is Esmeralda, amazing. That coffee was almost 100 points. I mean, in my opinion, humbly, it probably should have been 100 points because we don't know what 100 points looks like, right? But by all accounts, that coffee was absolutely mind-blowing. So, yeah, it's deserved.
And have you tried it?
I haven't.
Okay.
I wish.
Because I've got samples of it that I'm going to try on Friday.
Oh, my God.
First time. So
Who roasted it?
Jerome Jerome Rosler from Nucleus Coffee Tools.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, well, I didn't know who to get to roast it, and asked around, and a lot of people said Jerome Rosler. So he roasted for, I believe, a woman named Alicia Tan. Now, Alicia Tan is the Singapore Brewers Cup champion who got the highest ever open service score in Brewers Cup this year.
Amazing.
Like, just highest ever.
Yeah.
So obviously she butchered her, I feel bad saying it, but she didn't go well in a compulsory, so she didn't win. But anyway, So he's done that. And I think he was involved with Martin Wolf, the last year's Brewers Cup champion as well. But anyhow, that's all to say, he's one of the best roasters of small batch coffee in the world. So anyway, so he got to roast it. And I just, I'm so excited to try it. You know, it's a really cool opportunity. And I've seen a lot of conjecture about coffee being sold at this price.
Yeah.
It's not all been positive from everyone.
No.
And, I get it. I get some of it because there would be some people that look at what's going on in the coffee world more broadly right now and think, well, geez, you know, someone getting $30,000 a kilo while another person gets 3 ounces of bugger all, not really fair. So, understand the sentiment, but you can still be happy for someone making an achievement at the same time.
Absolutely. And let's not forget all the hard work that Esmeralda's put into this. This is not just any old crop. This is something that they've put absolute blood, sweat and tears into. Yeah. And honestly, the value is what someone's willing to pay at the end of the day.
And if you talk to all the Panama producers, I think they have this kind of sibling, some of them have described it to me as sibling rivalry amongst themselves, right? But they all credit the Peterson family, so the owners of Esmeralda, with bringing geisha to Panama. And,
absolutely.
It's kind of changed coffee forever in a way.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about coffee here. We're talking about a luxury good. This is like your Hermes of coffee. This is top tier.
Do you, part of me doesn't want to see coffee become too much like wine though. If obviously it's good that we have these high prices and things like that, but I would hate to. The fear I have is that it goes to a set of hands that doesn't do the coffee justice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the name of the company that bought it is called Julith Coffee, and they're based in Dubai. And I think at the time they purchased it, they were 1 week. They had been open for 1 week or something, which is pretty extraordinary. But I do know some people that work there. I know the head barista there. His name's Cyprian. I met him when I was in Dubai. Amazing barista. So I mean, I have no fears that he personally will be bad at brewing it. But it's just is coffee becoming too much like elite wine if we go down this path?
Oh, look, maybe in a way. There's this really cool documentary called Red Obsession, and it's about that sort of whole mentality of purchasing wine specifically because of its brand. And there's some wine houses that just can't keep up, right? Because there's all these people who are just like, I want this particular wine because it makes me look cool or whatever, right? I kind of don't think that coffee could necessarily go that way just because it's a fleeting moment in time. Every time you have a harvest and you've got this beautiful single lot that's incredible, you enjoy it while you've got it, and then it's gone, right? Which is one of the beautiful things that I really love about coffee. But I think it can never be something that you stockpile or you hold on to for that reason.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing, and one of the things I said before the auction, which I said in that video where I predicted it, is that this may never happen again. Like the stars kind of aligned to produce a 98-point coffee. So there's no guarantee of that ever happening again. For all we know, there could be a hurricane that wipes out all the trees at Esmeralda next year.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
this harvest would forever live in legend, so to speak. So that's why I kind of thought that was one of the factors. But, you're right. I think one of the cool things about vintages and harvests of things is that you can reflect on what was the best one ever. And, I think back sometimes to some of the coffees. So we're former colleagues. Some of the coffees that we had from Finca Hartmann, one of the best coffee farms in the world. Some of the coffees that we had from, Loito, Alita, all these cool farms, but I have another thought. I don't know that this will be the last. This could be this record. It's not likely, but there's a possibility it's broken again this year because all these Panama producers have their own auctions coming up, and they to get in the best of Panama, you have to have 20 kilos or something per lot. And some of these amazing coffees, there's not 20 kilos of, so they can't actually submit them to the best of Panama. And some farmers choose not to participate. So you think of Finca Deborah, you think of Longboard coffee.
Yep.
It's not likely, but it's possible that it's broken again. Maybe not in the too distant future.
Look, absolutely. There are some exceptional producers and exceptional crops out there. I mean, we spoke about Poma coffee not long ago, and how they're really like trying to dial into how do you get the perfect coffee, right? And some of these techniques, that they're only 6 years old or something like that now, and some of these techniques won't be fully known and sort of passed on for another couple of years yet. But once they do, I feel like that's a bit of an unlocking as well. There's so many things that we are learning from coffee. We're such a young industry, really, in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
And we haven't really applied the level of science that we should on our crop level, at least. And so it would be really cool to see what's happening in the next, even 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Poma coffee just then. So for those that are listening that don't know what Poma coffee is, it is a research center in Denmark where they have greenhouses to produce varieties like geisha and their own varieties that they've developed. And they conduct experiments on coffee farms as well. So I think one of their partner farms is Volcan Azul in Costa Rica. And I actually spoke to one of the founders, Rasmus, on the phone the other day while he was in the middle of a paddock in Costa Rica doing his experiments. So it's like they do things like apply this spray, which acts as it's like a type of clay or something. So it acts as like literal shade cover on the leaves. So it reduces the temperature that the plants experience or something and increases photosynthesis somehow because the plants are cooler, which is just nuts. But it's like some people might think of that as like an abomination, but it's also really exciting because, how far can we go with coffee? How much further can we apply this to other areas? I don't know.
That's fascinating. The stuff that they're doing is really interesting because I think that, coffee for the longest time, it just really hasn't had a lot of that sort of high level agro stuff applied to it. And we're coming against so many challenges with climate change. We've got changing microenvironments, we've got changing weather patterns. I've been in this industry buying for, it must be 15 years or so now. And I've definitely seen a change.
What are some of those changes?
The particularly rain, so either less or more, and the months that it rains in. Harvests have changed completely. Like when I first started buying coffee, I would be able to purchase stuff from Central America really easily quite early in the year, like January, February-ish. Now I'm pushing more like March, April, even May in some cases. And that's just crazy to me. So, everything is shifting. And with that shifts all sorts of stuff like whether you've got availability of workers, because a lot of them are migratory. It changes the weather when it's actually harvesting. So whether it's warm or cold or whatever, it's just weird.
Well, this is a good segue into what I asked you on to talk about, which was the changing dynamics, I guess, of labor on farm in countries like Colombia. So when I was in Jakarta recently, one of the best brewers routines I've ever seen was done by Carlos Escobar. And he kind of had this really incredible speech. And then I interviewed him after, and he told me that the average age of a coffee farmer in Colombia is 58 years old. And that is there's not enough renewal going on for the next generation of coffee farmers to facilitate the amount of coffee that needs to be produced to meet demand. So long story short, we're going to run out of staff on coffee farms. And it's a real problem. And I think, we talk about climate change as an issue. We talk about pricing as an issue, and they're both, existential issues to coffee. But I think another one that we need to consider that probably gets less airtime is kind of, the lack of a next generation to produce coffee.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's a problem in all agriculture, right? Like, let's not just mince around there. Like, all agriculture is having problems with this aging population, even here in Australia, right? With my particular background, I grew up on a farm. I have two very aging parents. We have a beautiful property, extremely lush. You could grow whatever the hell you wanted on it, right? Do any of the kids want to take on that farm? Nah, we don't want to. So that farm's going to be sold somewhere else, right? Maybe it'll become a development. Likely, I don't know.
What do your parents produce?
Well, we used to produce fruit. So we'd have peaches and strawberries, and then for a long time cattle, and now they're too old to look after the land, so it'll have to be sold at some point.
Did you ever work on farm a lot?
Yeah, sure you did. I did, yeah, absolutely.
My dad had a horse stud for, I can't even remember how long, but so I lived on a farm, it was not a farm, but a horse stud for 10, 15, how long did I live there? I can't remember. But anyway, but it's hard work. It is hard work. So in the summer, in Australia, our summer can, get up to 40 degrees Celsius. You're out there carting hay, lifting heavy hay bales, really, really
hard work.
Nasty work. And then every morning before school, I used to get up at 5 a.m. and feed animals and feed horses and stuff like that, and then get on the bus and in the freezing cold in Ballarat winter. But I mean, I don't know what it's like to pick coffee for a living. But the level of labor, from what I gather from research and having been to coffee farms, it's high. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really hard job. Okay. And then, I think a lot of reasons why young people don't want to actually take on the reins of running a farm is going to be definitely around the challenge of the labor, but also around how much money you can get out of it, right? It's not exactly a lavish lifestyle.
Yeah.
Being a farmer of any sort, and particularly a coffee farmer. And you've also got the challenge of actually getting access to land. And when you're out in a rural community, you can even have trouble getting access to community life. You can't get online necessarily. It can be really hard to access education and ways to push yourself forward. So there are a lot of challenges in coffee.
Yeah, I guess one that I could share an anecdote that you and I experienced together is the lack of infrastructure being able to even get to farms. Like it's kind of a miracle that people even ship coffee in a way at the volume they do, because when we went to Bolivia one time, I remember just being so jet lagged and being on that road and it's pouring down rain and I'm falling asleep, hitting your shoulder, waking back up. It was like torture for 6 hours. And, I couldn't handle that for 6 hours, yet some people do this for their whole lives. And like, it's just, and mind you, some of the most dangerous roads in the world are in Bolivia on the way to those farms. So it was pretty extreme, but it's concerning, and I don't know that there's an answer for it, to be quite honest. Like, if I was to put it to you, do you think that we can make it more enticing to a younger generation of coffee farmers, or is there some sort of technology that fills the gap?
Look, there are people out there who are trying to make a difference, right? You've got a bunch of NGOs who are trying to do things like Save the Children. You've got Technoserve. You've got the FNC. There's a lot of people who are trying to actually get young people more engaged, right? But I think it's more holistic than that. And I think the real solution needs to come from making sure that there are enough yields, so we're taking care of the crop itself, the regenerative ag or whatever it takes, some of the techniques from POMA, for example, to try and make sure that your yields are at the maximum level that tree can handle without being overstressed, but also making sure that there is enough income coming in, because you can't make it attractive without a good income. So it's really taking care of the entire production rather than just the youth sector of that, trying to get the youth sector involved in producing coffee. And I think, from a roastery perspective, because that's where I come from, and I'm not sort of, an actor in the rest of the chain, but from a roastery perspective, one of the great things that we could do is thinking about sustainability programs, thinking about our, if we want to be like a B Corp corporation or whatever it is, however our sustainability and sourcing model looks, that needs to include something about youth. It needs to include something about ensuring that there are younger generations to ensure the sustainability of coffee moving forward. And whether that's partnering with one of these NGOs or something on the ground, but it has to involve the producer group as well. It has to be something that is coming from them, because how else do we know exactly, how to be impactful?
So what is that in practice? What's a sustainability program what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, so for me personally, I have sort of a set of rules that I like to purchase by, and I try to make sure that that's as holistic and sustainable as possible. And as a part of that, I could look to partner with an NGO or something that will actually try and incorporate young people's education programs into learning how to farm. And this is really important for sustainability of coffee, like in general, as we spoke before, because we need younger generations to get involved in like pushing forward agriculture, not just coffee, any agriculture, so that we can continue to eat, right? So these people are trying to ensure that there's like plots of land where young people can go and learn how to actually produce correctly, where they can access education, where they have mentorship programs to teach them how to, the old ways of farming, but also new ways, new technologies, ways to actually track your yields or track your moisture levels or whatever it is that you need, your fertilizer program, etc.
I think putting this through a food security context is really interesting, because we have in the coffee industry a guy called Daryanto Watasa, so Indonesian, head of the Specialty Coffee Association of Indonesia, I believe.
Yes.
But he's also now a government official in the Indonesian government. So so you've worked with Daryanto in the past.
I have, yeah. I did not know that.
So cool. He's part of the government's, the Ministry of Agriculture's food security program. So he's literally in charge of, that whole sector, and they've kind of got a really interesting approach to it, where the government's kind of, I visited a farm over there, and the government actually, I think, owns the co-op, and it's support. They've got like a national movement now investing in their coffee farms and things like that, which I find quite fascinating. And I'm not going to pretend that I don't want to come across as someone that's sitting here lecturing, other countries or people on what to do with their programs. But it's I think some of the challenges they face, and, we experienced it together again in Bolivia, is some people don't want to prune their trees because they think, well, this is going to yield me less results. Whereas actually I think it's the opposite, where if they prune the trees, it'll actually become more abundant. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of those sort of those concerns are definitely out there. You know, I've seen producers who don't want to prune their trees and they've got like 30-year-old trees. And I'm like, yeah, but now we're just a wood farmer, right? And people who are not, you know, like one example that I've seen in Timor, for example, is cutting everything down completely, you know, ravaging the earth of any like undergrowth, etc. And it can't really help the soil. That will not be useful to the soil. Trees have to start from scratch again, etc. This is kind of stuff that puts you back, as opposed to taking care of the earth first and foremost, and then trying to produce a great crop out of that.
So if we're, and I don't know if you can comment on this as like a tree expert, but you've got a background in farming, you've been buying coffee for a long time. What are some of the things that like people that listen to this podcast that have never been to a coffee farm might not ever go? Like, what are some of the things that we don't think about with, you know, managing the coffee trees? Because of course, let's remember, coffee comes from a cherry, so a fruit that grows on a tree. So what are like some of these things that we don't consider that we probably should?
Look, I'm not a tree expert by any means, but, you know, I'll give my 2 cents. I might be completely wrong, but anyway, coffee trees were naturally developed in a place where they were under shade. So I think that is a really useful tool, and whether it works in every environment, I don't know. Heavy, nasty pruning, and this is just from my own experience growing some apple trees, right? Heavy, nasty pruning will impact your root system, and your root system cannot recover very quickly. It's like the roots and the branches kind of almost mirror each other.
So is that if the like two bigger branches chopped off, then
yeah, if you take like, you know, you take off the whole big massive chunk of your tree, it'll take forever to respond back to growing again. Whereas if you just take some of it, it can easily come back again, and it will come back really lush. I don't know what techniques you need to do to produce more fruit and things like that, but definitely trees need to breathe. So if there's like too much, you know, too cramped in together, you're just never going to get the production that you would want. But yeah, there's plenty of things that a farmer has to think of, specific to their environment as well, because they're different environments and need different things. Yeah, you know.
Well, one thing that I find really fascinating about agriculture in countries like ours is that there's, in that sort of industrial agriculture sector, there's a lot of technology that's implemented now, and there's an AI, different kind of AI, artificial insemination, where the vets will literally, I think it's more efficient these days. The efficacy is higher for a vet to artificially impregnate a cow than it is to have a bull run with them. So, you know, that technology has been implemented quite widely already. And then there's, you know, things like, I think we spoke about it previously with headers that, so it's like a large machine that harvests wheat or canola or grains. And it literally will adjust its level based off like scans that have been done with drones and stuff like that. It's absolutely nuts what is available these days.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, imagine, you know, you could have a drone that just flies over your coffee plantation and goes, all right, everything's ready to harvest because I can see that it's mostly ripe fruit. Off you go, rather than kind of having to, you know, scout around the place and check each tree manually. You could do it with drones, or you can. I'm sure there's plenty of other ideas. I'm not a farmer, but, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of other things that we could do to advance the technology on farm. And I think that's something that we really have failed in a lot as an industry as a whole, is dealing with that technology piece, right? Here we are still today with a whole bunch of people out there handpicking cherry by cherry. There's got to be a better way, right?
Yeah, well, I spoke to the guys at Classic Beans in Indonesia about a de-mucilage machine. So not de-pulping, de-mucilage. Because they literally have people hand sorting the mucilage out after the pulping stage for washed coffee. And it's like, you know, that's so much work. And I asked them, like, you would you get one of those machines? And they said, no, it's like 50 grand. So like the access to the technology is kind of restricted by capital in some ways, but which is kind of where what I want to talk about next, is because you just spoke then about drones that could hypothetically identify when a coffee is ready to be harvested, right? No doubt that technology probably already exists, but it's how do we get access to it and give access to it, or how the access is being restricted, or there's a barrier imposed. And that's what's concerning. That's what concerns me, because these big companies that produce these technologies, like, they're motivated by money, and not all the coffee producers immediately have access to be able to just throw that expense on. So it's like, when, in your opinion as a buyer, and you've got farms that you work with year in, year out, do you think in some of those farms where they might not necessarily have access to the capital, hypothetically buyers like you could work with them to get access to the things like this?
Yeah, look, there's probably ways and means, right? I mean, I think all actors need to work together in the chain. This is not something that's easily solved, but if we can come up with ways of finding grants or finding capital in some form, then surely that can be worked on as a team rather than individually. It shouldn't necessarily just be down to the producer themselves to come up with the capital for that, because that's just never going to happen. If we really truly want a sustainable industry, we have to work together.
Yeah, it's just an enormous concern for me, because there's surely, I just think greed, dictates a lot of those industries. Like artificial intelligence right now, I think, if that becomes concentrated in too few companies, that's a real big problem. And same with technologies that might be patented like this. It could become a vital need in the future, but then there's the opportunity for exploitation in a way. So to give you an example, this is a hypothetical, by the way. This is a hypothetical. So for example, we're in a situation like Colombia has too few coffee farmers to be able to harvest coffee effectively. So farmers are put in this position where they need access to technology that can help harvest the coffee, automatically. But then they don't have the capital for it.
Yeah.
So maybe they engage in some plan or something, that like pay later scheme that becomes available to them, but it could end up being contractually exploitative. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas here. It's like, that concerns me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's multifaceted. There is so many things that we need to consider, right? But I think that the crux of it all is that this needs to be addressed, because it's getting harder and harder to produce coffee every single year. This is it's not going to ever get easier.
Yeah. Something that just popped into my head. I was having a conversation with someone this morning from Saudi Arabia. So I'm considering going to Saudi Arabia in the next 2 months. I'm hoping I can go. So the point being is I want to visit some coffee farms there. There's an area of Saudi Arabia called Jazan. And so in Saudi Arabia, and this is kind of one of Saudi Arabia is blessed by having, a government that will invest in the coffee industry. So they've investing $1.4 billion US in revitalizing their coffee growth. And I know that's not something that countries in Africa and Central and South America have access to, but they're very blessed to have that situation. But they're revitalizing their coffee industry, which has been growing there for a very long time. So it's just next to, their growing region is just next to Yemen. And they're investing so much money in developing technologies to grow coffee the best it can be in Saudi Arabia. And I actually think that, some countries, some countries have the money to throw at things, but these people have the determination for it to work well, and which I think is the more important ingredient. And hot take here, I think Saudi Arabia will grow some of the best coffee in the world in the next 5 to 10 years. Do you agree?
Look, it's completely possible, right? You've got all the resources, you've got all the desire. Why not? Right? We could have more POMA type controlled environments happening with that kind of money. Imagine have all this greenhouse grown coffee with everything perfect to make the perfect cherry. Hell yeah. Maybe that'll be your 100 point.
Maybe, because I interviewed someone from the Saudi coffee company earlier in the year. His name was Fahad Al Tubiani, but It's pretty fascinating what they're doing over there, and they've got huge revenue from oil, so they're able to invest in things like this. But I think if they take that approach of they've got the sort of terroir, but I think they haven't. There's not been a lot of love, so to speak, put into their coffee industry because obviously it's such a small fraction of what their economy is. But they seem to have a lot of will to want to do it, and I think that if you were to take the conditions that they have, where in some areas they've got altitudes of up to like 3,000 meters where coffee's growing, and you put that level of investment in technology and fermentation like they're going to, like say for example, if you're putting like an Avengers team together of having that Takesi like altitude with De Terra from Brazil like production or fermentation, like you're meshing something pretty special together there, and that's why I think that the Saudis, in 5 to 10 years, they'll be growing some of the best coffee ever.
Oh yeah, there's every chance that could happen.
And you'd be shocked as well at how good it already is. Like some of the Saudi anaerobic naturals and things like that. It's pretty good. Like I wouldn't be surprised if someone wins a competition one day using it.
I'd love to see that. I haven't actually tried any Saudi coffee. I must get my hands on some, but. Yeah, how good would it be? Like someone winning coffee winning with a coffee from somewhere strange? Let's do it.
Do you think to that end, going back to what I asked you at the beginning of the podcast about, we were talking about Esmeralda, how long do you think until it is that other countries begin, or farms in other countries begin getting that recognition to that level? Like in the form of, say, like a $15,000 a kilo coffee. I don't think it's too far away.
I truly hope it's not too far away. I really do. There is so much incredible coffee out there from so many different interesting regions, and that's sort of one of my little pet projects is trying, particularly in Asia Pacific, to bring really cool coffees and regions to light a little bit. Because there's just so much out there. We shouldn't just be restricted to just that from a few.
What's one country that grows coffee that the average listener might not realize grows coffee?
Well, I've been getting coffee from Philippines lately. Wow.
Yeah.
Loving it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Let's see. Malawi has coffee. I don't know if everyone knows that one. That's a good one.
East African country.
Yeah, East African.
When I was at St. Ali, you bought coffee from Malawi.
I did.
Do you still get it?
I haven't had any in a while. I have definitely got it on my radar as something I really want to get. Let's see. Sri Lanka has some great coffee.
Sri Lanka?
Yes. There's some coffee in there as well.
I didn't realise. Apparently Fiji's got coffee growing as well. Sasha Sesic has been involved in a project over there to grow Liberica or something in Fiji. I tried it. Wasn't too bad. It's got a long way to go before it's like, an amazing cup, but like it grows there. There's wild coffee there and it's pretty good. So, there's so many more. We even grow it in Australia. Yeah. Some people might not realize we grow it in Australia and there's good stuff in Australia now. Like
there truly is. Yeah.
Crater Mountain, Jack Murat. Do you know any others?
Definitely some more that are not on the top of my list at the minute. But yeah, Cradle Mountain. I've been cupping some of the stuff from those guys. Damn. Yeah.
Her name's Lucy as well. The farm.
Yes.
What's her name?
I know. We've bonded over our shared name.
Yeah. she's like she's a classic Australian woman as well.
Absolutely. Proper Australian producer. I love it.
Yeah. So going back to sort of the food security thing, and I want to talk a little bit about one industry that you might not think has some similarities with what coffee could face, but does, is the dairy industry. So with dairy farming in Australia, there was a price war going on between supermarkets who effectively had a duopoly over Australian milk. So these two big companies, Woolworths and Coles, buying milk, and it was far too cheap. For a while there, it was $1 a litre, and you could get water for cheaper than that, which is just nuts. So farmers were losing money hand over fist for years and years and years. Yep. So I think from 10 years ago to now, there's now 25% less dairy farming going on in Australia. And what's happened to the price? It's gone up a lot. And even still, like it's not like a windfall industry for those that are in it. Like they have other cost challenges with fertilizers, with fuel and lack of feed and all these sorts of things. But I think that number, it's like if we start seeing that in coffee, that would just be nuts and devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're running a business and you're losing money, you're going to walk away, right? And this has been happening in the coffee industry for a really long time. And with our recent big price spike that we had, and we're still sort of kind of not so much in it, but I think the entire industry kind of just held its breath to get over that, because we were like, oh, damn, what happens if we can't actually sell this coffee? What happens if our consumers don't want to purchase it with really high prices? We must pass that on somewhere. And consumers had not had that challenge because we'd been at such low prices for such a long time. And now I think we're finding that there is a little more elasticity in the market than we actually anticipated as roasters start putting up prices and consumers go, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I probably should pay more for that. That's fantastic, because that means that we can actually continue with these higher prices. And God forbid that we actually move ourselves off the C market at some point and we can actually pay the price that it is deserved. I
hear that said a lot, like detaching from the C market. And I don't, what mechanism would be triggered to sort of not classify it as a commodity anymore? Like, does everyone just grow higher quality coffee and then it's no longer commodity grade? Like, I don't understand when people say detach from the seed market, because it's good in theory, but like, what does it mean in reality? What does it look like?
Yeah, I know that's a good question. I think, as long as the C market is around, it doesn't matter what coffee you purchase, doesn't matter how good or how poor that quality is, it will always have that base level price, because the C kind of sets the base. It's like, why would you buy a commodity grade coffee at the same price as a specialty coffee? And we actually came across this. This was pretty funny during this high price point, and I've got like some really long-term relationships, and some of my long-term relationships were like, nah, you know what, I'm going to keep my price the same. And I'm like, yeah, but bro, that means that it's the same price as a blender, and that doesn't make sense in my head. Like, we need to go more. Like, let's go higher.
So
here.
you as the buyer sort of said, no.
Yeah, because it just doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And like, I appreciate that, but also everyone's got to make a little bit of money here. And just because the prices were low for like ever doesn't mean they need to stay that way. And I think this is the sort of the problem, particularly in Australia, right? I started in coffee 25 years ago, something like that. I was selling coffee for $3.50, and today it's not really that much more. Well, only recently it's started to be more. And the fact of that alone is just ridiculous, because we've had fertilizer prices, as an example, particularly with the wars going on, the Ukraine-Russia war, the fertilizer prices through the roof, logistic prices through the roof, labor prices through the roof. So, of course, coffee needs to be impacted by that. Your input costs alone have just gone right up as a producer. So, there's such an interesting thing. Removing ourselves from the C market would absolutely need to be the destruction of the C market. It would need to no longer be a thing. The problem with the C market, this is the core problem, in my opinion, is that we have actors who push and pull the coffee market price that have nothing to do with coffee, right? And this is not just speculators. There's a whole bunch of different things that happen that input into the price, like such as your geopolitics, right? But then we also have the issue that we have major countries that are major producers in the coffee market that push and pull the price around as well. So the saying that's always quite interesting to me is that if Brazil has a sniffle, the rest of the world catches a cold.
Yeah,
and, meaning that the impact of anything that happens in Brazil impacts the rest of the market hugely. You could be a producer over in Guatemala and your prices have just been pushed and pulled around all over the place. And it's really hard to have a business when you don't know what price you're going to get from day one to day 20. You really don't know. Every day is different.
Well, there's like there's only a handful of companies that control most of the world's coffee exporters, right? And I can't remember them by name, but there's something like 4 companies that control most of coffee importing and exporting across the world.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
But the system, this is something that I've been thinking about in an interesting way. And Lisa Farr from Map It Forward spoke about it the other day, and that is that US coffee roasters and importers are particularly vulnerable right now because of the instability of the presidency, which is floating tariffs. And that could be to Brazil mostly, which would just be devastating because for the amount of volume and prices and that they pay for the coffees, for example, they don't have the cash flow to just take that hit of a tariff because the tariff is charged to the importer. So if you're importing $1 million worth of coffee, let's just say, well, now it's $1.5 million. That extra 500,000 is tax paid to the US government. Like that's a massive hit. So not only is the price a lot higher, it's like you might not have the cash to pay it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you've got a real liquidity problem. I mean, that much of a increase, and it's an enormous increase that you're talking about from Brazil, would be absolutely devastating to the US market. I have, interestingly, in the last month, basically had, I think, 3 different people approach me saying, hey, I currently send coffee to the US. Maybe I can send it to you instead. And that's pretty interesting because this is showing there's a real fear that this could happen.
Yeah. So they're trying to alter their supply chains.
Correct. Yeah. And you would do the same if you were selling coffee somewhere.
100%.
Absolutely.
And this is the thing. I saw some people say that the price will go up on the commodity market by a lot because producers won't be able to sell into America, which to me doesn't actually make any sense because if the demand is no longer there for their coffee from the US and they have to find alternative sources, like I don't understand economically how the price would go up. Isn't it harder to sell the coffee? Isn't there, like, I know there's logistical challenges, but is there so much extra buying power across the rest of the world that, if you've got, it just doesn't make much sense to me.
I think one of the biggest issues is that we have these huge warehouses, essentially, just the certified stocks that are sitting around the place. Certified stocks is coffee that's sitting there ready to go, essentially. And if you are a roaster in the US, you're just going to be sucking up that because you can't just shut down operations overnight and go, well, that's it, I'm bankrupt, I give up. You'll be trying to use up every bean that you can possibly get. Those certified stocks have a real big impact on what's going on with the actual market itself because it's a supply and demand situation. If there is not enough supply and there's not enough kind of stockpile of coffee, then the market will respond to that. And those stockpiles are already quite low. So the reduction of that would definitely drive price up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, see, I just think it's such a volatile time. I'm gonna quickly check what the commodity price is right now because we have gone from commodity coffee price
Barchart.com.
So as of today, which is the 12th of August, it was my birthday yesterday. 31.
Wow, happy birthday.
I'm getting old.
Damn.
$3.19. So it dipped below $3 a few weeks ago. And this is still pretty big volatility.
There's huge volatility, absolutely. Gone are the days when we can just go, I won't even bother looking at the market today. That's it changes day to day by so much.
Yeah, I have trouble interpreting what this all means because there was like a revised. I was reading something about a revised weather update for the Brazilian harvest this year, which was actually a bit more optimistic than what was thought earlier in the year. So it's like looking like it may not be as bad as we first thought. But then you go adding into the mix things like tariffs and how that'll affect US coffee roasters. Like, there's just one thing I think coffee should give itself credit for is how resilient the industry is. Like through all this shit, like people are still trading coffee, people are still opening cafes, people are still growing coffee, people are still roasting it. Like through all this crap, like people are still going. And if you had said some of this like a year ago, we'll be facing this, I think some people would have just buckled at the knees, but some people are just so resilient in this industry. And
We're still here. I mean, all the funds really started in 2020, right? And yet year after year after year, we're still here, we're still fighting.
yeah, I just don't know how. I think so many other industries, like, I mean, obviously people are resilient, and that's one of the big things to take away from this. But the coffee industry has been not just in Australia, around the world has been so resilient through all the shipping issues, through all the cost increases for fertilizer, the sea market sort of increase at the moment, climate change, changing weather patterns. Like, man, it's been a tough couple of years. If you're listening to this, if you're a coffee professional, this is me saying to you, well done. You've made it this far, and like it's been a couple of tough years, and I was really worried like at the beginning of or middle of last year when things started to happen, because I've got a new business, and it's kind of hard to grow a coffee business at any time, but like really backwards to the wall. And I'm sure a lot of your wholesale partners were the same.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really tough time. I mean, I feel like maybe we need a little trauma group that we can, just all share our horrible stories. But caffeine is addictive, so our customers will keep coming back. That is the takeaway.
Trauma group with Lucy and Kirk here.
Yeah.
Just grab yourself a cup of tea or decaf.
We've got some bickies in the corner.
Got some bickies in the corner. We'll treat you right. No, but I truly do feel like that, because so you look at the construction industry in Australia, and I'm not saying that our issues are the same, but there are building companies in Australia that are just going bust, like disintegrating before our eyes, and it's created this really, really troublesome problem of housing supply. But I don't see coffee businesses going broke kind of at the same rate. I mean, statistically, I think there's a lot of cafes in Australia that close because there's too many, and it always seems like there's another one that comes straight in and replaces them. So like we have all these, we always say, oh, this will be the year that a lot of cafes close and stuff like that. And it never really eventuates like that. There's just
I know.
It just feels like there's a business that closed a few months ago just upstairs from where my cafe is, and another operator's moved in and they're having a crack. It's like it just never works out like that.
Absolutely. I thought for sure that the high sea prices would crumble a lot of roasteries in Australia, because we have way too many. I mean, that's kind of the fact. We don't have enough people to actually, supply to in the first place. But they're still going strong.
Yeah, and I heard some rumors from people that I really trust about big roasteries in Australia that could collapse this year, and hasn't happened, and they still look healthy. I don't know. But yeah, before we finish up, I wanted to ask you, so we actually recorded a podcast a few weeks ago, and you messaged me after saying, hey, I wasn't really feeling at my best. I've been dealing with some stuff. You've got a relative that's just recently developed dementia.
Yeah.
And this is something that kind of I can talk about with a bit of experience, because my mum had dementia, and unfortunately she died from it. And so my mum developed dementia, I think when she was 49, and died at 60.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough thing. But I mean, of course, if you were not feeling your best on that day, I'm not gonna release a podcast where you don't feel comfortable with it. But it's what's that been like for you going through that?
Well, she has been admitted into a home for 18 months now, I think, around about. And it's been a really interesting journey, because, to be honest, I knew nothing about dementia at the beginning. Honestly, it was just like, oh, it's this thing that you get when you get old. And now, as a primary caregiver, as like the main contact for all of the things, it's been absolutely eye-opening to me to see how many people are impacted by this. When one person goes down with dementia, it means that there's multiples that need to actually remove themselves from society in order to care for that person. Just the amount of effort that goes into looking after someone with dementia has been insane. But the prevalence of it, and the fact that this is something that is ticking along in the background that we don't talk about, is just crazy to me.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think not many people really there's no shame in having a family member that has dementia, or having someone close to you that has dementia. I don't think there's any shame, but I don't think people realize the issues that the caregivers and the relatives sort of go through, and like it gets to that stage where you have to put someone in a home and you feel guilty about it, but at the end of at some point it becomes a necessity, right?
Absolutely.
And with my mum, it's like the hard part's when they're alive. And strangely enough, and this sounds very callous and horrible, but it becomes easier it became easier when my mum died, to be honest, because it was so tough visiting her, because visiting her, meant instead of having a conversation, it's spoon feeding her, and that's kind of where it all gets to. And I really empathize with you in that regard. And some people might not think this is relevant in a coffee podcast, but if someone out there who's listening to this is going through it as well, we're in our community here. I feel you. I feel you're not alone, and it's a horrible, horrible thing to go through, and it's unfortunately something that never gets better. But you can find a way forward, and you can find happiness. And the most important thing you can do, and we played this at my mum's funeral, was my stepdad took her skateboarding while she had dementia. Like he took her scuba diving, he did all these incredible things. And like you just got to use that time. My thoughts to you is like using that time as best you can, because you will not regret it one bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I make sure that my aunt is the one with dementia. She's very musical, and she's very much into poetry, and she's a little bit of a free spirit. So every time I go and visit her, we sing together, we read poems together, we spend as much time doing the things that I know that she loves together. And even though maybe she doesn't necessarily respond, or she may be not really feeling her best that particular day, I always try and, just continue chipping away at it, because I know it does have an impact.
And I think this is something when we think about grief with people that we know, right? Or think about death when someone passes away. If it's like a Muhammad Ali, we reflect on their life, and they get this big public kind of biography, I guess, of what their life was like. But obviously that's not afforded to everyone who passes away. But everyone kind of has their own incredible story. And it's like with my mum, she was very kind. Whenever she dropped me off to school, she'd say 3 random acts of kindness every day. She said it every day. And, she was real healthy, and she did a lot of good things for people. And I'm sure your aunt's the same. So, I just think that, not everyone gets that eulogy, that public eulogy, but everyone has this like amazing story as well.
Absolutely. So, yeah. I'm trying to compile that amazing story for her at the minute, actually, which is quite interesting that you say that. Trying to get all the information and gather the threads, essentially, so everybody in the family can share that and enjoy that memory of her.
What would 3 of the main things be for your aunt?
A folkie. So one of the things that she really enjoyed doing was playing the harp for people. And she would say that she was really terrible at it, but the beautiful thing about a harp is that everyone thinks that you're doing an amazing job, even if you're terrible at it.
Yeah.
So in her room at the minute, she's got a couple of harps, of her favourite harps, and she sort of plunks away at them every now and again, and everyone always sort of stops to watch. It's quite fun. A nature lover. So one of the things we would do when she was much more mobile would go to any tree we can find and give it a hug and feel the spirit of that particular tree. That's something that she really loves to do. She has always been a community member as well, which is a really important thing for her, helping out, doing anything that she can. She would work at the library for free. She would work at, all sorts of things, actually, various events and things. So always trying to be a part of the community in some way, shape or form. She was very avid Baptist and really enjoyed that whole community aspect. I think that's a really big thing as well.
See, like all these people do these amazing things, and they don't get the public eulogy, but there's just millions of people
Yeah.
like that. They have their own incredible stories all across the world that don't get told, but you know, they're worthy, they're important, and you know, this is mine and yours. Your story with our family member, and I'm sure there's people watching or listening that have something similar. So
I'm
you know,
sure.
enjoy it while you can. You got to
Yep.
make the most of a positive situation. I'm at peace with it now, but you know, I just thought I'd ask you about that during the podcast.
Yeah, no worries.
And you know, on that note, I think that's a good note to leave it on. So you know, enjoy everyone.